Hello, everybody, and welcome to my recap of the 97th Annual Academy Awards. That's right, another Oscar ceremony is behind us. It was an awards season that turned out to be a bit more thrilling than the awards show itself, but it's still the culmination of months of speculation and reporting and scandal and everything else that we saw this year. And as seemed to crystallize towards the end of the awards season, Anora was the big winner at the Oscars. It was really just a Best Actor win away from sweeping the big five awards with wins for editing, original screenplay, director, actress, and Best Picture. Sean Baker actually tied a record that Walt Disney held for most Oscars won in a single night. Walt Disney won 3 Shorts Awards and the Documentary Feature Award back in 1954. Baker is the first person to win 4 Oscars for the same movie and for directing, editing, writing, and producing a film. To put this into context, in one night, Sean Baker won more Academy Awards than Steven Spielberg has in his entire career. Others have come close to achieving this. James Cameron won 3 Oscars for editing, directing, and producing Titanic, but the movie was not nominated for its screenplay. Francis Ford Coppola won 3 Oscars for writing, directing, and producing The Godfather 2, but he didn't edit it, and the movie wasn't even nominated. The Daniels won 3 Oscars for writing, directing, and producing Everything Everywhere All at Once, but they didn't edit it, even though the movie won Best Editing. The closest we really have is Bong Joon-ho. He won 3 Academy Awards for producing, writing, and directing Parasite, but he did not officially win the award for Best International Feature because that award goes to the country, not the director. So while Bong Joon-ho accepted 4 Oscars, he actually only won 3. And if you're going to have somebody go up and make 4 speeches, I think that Sean Baker was probably the best case scenario because I thought that all of his speeches were well written, they were enthusiastic, they seemed genuine, they were brief, unlike some other speeches that we're going to talk about. And I particularly liked his Best Director speech, where he gave an impassioned defense of the theatrical experience.
Movie theaters, especially independently owned theaters, are struggling, and it's up to us to support them.
Now, as I've said on this channel many times before, it is up to the theaters themselves to step their game up with lower prices and by improving the experience on their end. I also liked the moment when he was accepting Best Director when he thanked Quentin Tarantino for casting Mikey Madison in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because that led to him casting her in Anora. And I'll actually go one step further in this Quentin Tarantino butterfly effect thing. If Quentin Tarantino hadn't cast John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, then I don't think that Travolta would have had the career resurgence that he did. And if he hadn't had that career resurgence, then we wouldn't have gotten one of the best Oscar moments of all time.
The wickedly talented one and only Adele Dazeem.
So really what I guess I'm saying is that Quentin Tarantino is almost single-handedly responsible for all of the great Oscar moments in the past 30 years. But speaking of Mikey Madison, let's turn now to the Best Actress race, which was one. Okay, I'm sorry, I could not resist doing that. I apologize. For those of you that may not get the joke, this is a reference to the fact that here in the United States, Hulu, which was simulcasting the Oscar ceremony alongside ABC, actually cut the Oscar ceremony off early after it ran over its allotted time, a problem that was solved in approximately 1987 when people figured out that you can program your VCR to record later than when a show is supposed to end. In Hulu's defense, who could have predicted that the Academy Awards were going to run long? I mean, that almost never happens. And who could have predicted that a lot of people would want to watch it? So you should maybe make sure that, your billion-dollar streaming service should be able to handle all of the traffic. It was a really bad look for Hulu last night because they were trying to hype so much that they were the new viewing destination of the Academy Awards for a new generation. And yet, unless you were watching on linear broadcast TV, you likely weren't able to see the end of the show, which is kind of, important. It's especially worse because as of the time that I'm recording this video, which is around 2:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, there's not even a replay available of the Academy Awards on Hulu itself. So if you missed it, well, sorry, you're out of luck. Anyway, back to Mikey Madison. She did take the Oscar in the hotly contested Best Actress race against Demi Moore. She's the 9th youngest Best Actress winner of all time. And honestly, I am both happy for her and I'm sad for Demi Moore. This is one of those years where there had to be one winner and one person that didn't win unless it was going to tie, which has only happened one time in the Best Actress race. And we just happened to have what I thought were 2 really good performances competing for for one award. I don't think that Demi's loss should take away from Mikey Madison's win. I'm really looking forward to what they both do next, and in case you're wondering, I looked it up, and it's a birthmark, not a hickey. Moving on. When we talk about Best Picture, I'm not necessarily sure that Emilia Perez was ever going to win the Best Picture Oscar, but I think that its collapse certainly helped to contribute to Anora's win. But let's take a second here and take Emilia Perez out of the picture and tip our caps to Neon. Neon is the little distributor that could, and this is their second win for Best Picture. They have less than 100 employees, and yet they have 2 Best Picture wins with Anora and Parasite. They've had 4 Best Picture nominees. They've won half the time. Netflix is still in search of its first Best Picture winner. They're 0 for 10, and that's a company with well over 10,000 employees. When we look at the biggest wins by distributor, Neon leads the way with 5, all 5 because of Anora. A24 comes in second place, another indie distributor with 3 wins. Those are all from The Brutalist. Netflix ties A24 with 3 wins. Universal had 2 wins, and Warner Brothers had 2 wins. So this really was a win for the indie distributors, having the most and tied for the second most wins of any of the big Hollywood studios. And as I mentioned, the 3 wins for A24 were for The Brutalist, which picked up 3 Oscars for Best Cinematography, Best Original Score, and as expected, Best Actor for Adrien Brody. Brody's 22-year gap between Best Actor wins is the second longest in history, behind Anthony Hopkins and the 29 years between his wins for Silence of the Lambs and The Father. And Adrien Brody also joins Anthony Hopkins, Jack Nicholson, Denzel Washington, Daniel Day-Lewis, Tom Hanks, Sean Penn, and Dustin Hoffman as the only living actors with 2 Best Actor trophies. Adrien Brody also set a record for most interminable Oscar acceptance speech, a speech that lasted, and I counted, 5 minutes and 37 seconds from the first word he spoke to the last word he spoke, and that doesn't even count the time it took for him to kiss Guy Pearce and throw his chewing gum at his wife. Most of this is on Adrien Brody because he seems to have forgotten that even though the moment of winning Best Actor is about him, the show itself is not about him, and it's not an invitation for him to go up and yell at the orchestra to stop playing after 3 minutes and 45 seconds of him saying really not much at all. He was just kind of rambling and then talking for another 2 full minutes.
Please, I'm wrapping up. I will wrap up. Please turn the music off. I've done this before. Thank you.
Honestly, I hope that everybody that was going after Timothée Chalamet for the speech that he made at the Screen Actors Guild Awards last week has that same energy for Adrien Brody, because in my opinion, his Oscar speech was way worse. And I felt like Sebastian Stan's Donald Trump through the whole thing, just glaring at Adrien Brody the entire time he was talking. And by the way, having Stan Trump over his shoulder really made it even harder to concentrate on what Adrien Brody was saying.
And who else?
And part of what makes it even worse is that there were other winners that barely got a chance to speak. That was the case with both of the Oscar wins for Dune Part 2. The Best Sound winners, and I checked this, were played off after about 50 seconds, leaving one of the winners unable to even say anything. And the same thing happened for the next category, which was Best Visual Effects, where one of the winners also didn't get a chance to speak after the music started playing 50 seconds into their speech.
My son Luca, my mother Elke, my father-in-law Carl, who brought me into this business.
And honestly, that part is on the Oscars for allowing that to happen, because if you want to give Adrien Brody 6 minutes to ramble, then you should have allotted time to give the other winners a little bit of a leeway so that they could also enjoy their moment in the spotlight. There was certainly time to be found in the show, which we'll talk about elsewhere. But I do want to say that I was happy to see that both of the teams that won for Dune Part 2 gave Denis Villeneuve his flowers during their acceptance speech. I think that he was shamefully snubbed for Best Director for both Dune movies, so it was nice to see that he got some recognition at the Oscars. And can I also say, I know that people give Timothée Chalamet a hard time, it was nice to see him shaking hands and hugging each person from Dune that won as they walked up to the stage. It really made it feel like the movie was a team effort. Overall, when we look at the total Oscar wins last night, Anora leads the pack with 5, followed by The Brutalist with 3, and then Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, and Wicked were the only other films to win multiple Oscars. They they won 2 apiece. And when we look at the winning percentage among movies that had multiple nominations, Anora won 5 out of 6. That's an 833 winning percentage. Flow only got 1 Academy Award, but was nominated just twice, so it had a 500 winning percentage. It went 1 for 2. A Real Pain also went 1 for 2 for a 500 winning percentage. Dune Part 2 had a 400 winning percentage with 2 out of 5 Oscars won. I'm Still Here went 1 for 3. That comes out to a 333 winning percentage. Followed by The Brutalist, which went 3 for 10. That's a 300 winning percentage. Wicked went 2 out of 10 for a 200 winning percentage. Then we have The Substance, which went 1 for 5. Emilia Perez went 2 for 13. That's a winning percentage of 154. Slightly better than Conclave, which won 1 out of 8 Oscars. That's a 125 winning percentage. And then there were 6 films that went completely winless on multiple nominations. A Complete Unknown went 0 for 8. Nosferatu went 0 for 4. Sing Sing went 0 for 3. The Wild Robot also went 0 for 3. The Apprentice went 0 for 2. And Nickel Boys went 0 for 2. As far as my predictions on who was going to win, I went 16 of 23 this year, which is exactly how I did last year. I was 1 behind the experts at Gold Derby. I was actually 3 ahead of Variety's predictions, 2 ahead of Deadlines, and 1 ahead of THR. That is not, by the way, an effort to boost myself. It is a reminder, and I think I said this on the show last year, that when it comes to predicting awards, when all else fails, just go with your own gut, because nobody can really actually predict who these people are going to vote for. There's just too many variables. Before we go on to talk more about the show itself, I also wanted to point out that winners from last night's show, like Anora and Emilia Perez and The Substance, have all been on the awards radar since May because they debuted at the Cannes Film Festival. And when I did the coverage of the award winners at Cannes, I said, hey, listen, put these movies on your awards radar. And it turned out that they were either big winners or competitive for big wins throughout the entire ceremony. So just a reminder that if you really want to be plugged into the awards and know what movies you should be looking out for, that really starts in a few months when the winners from Cannes are announced. I'll be covering that here on the channel because it's become a year-round thing, and more the Cannes Film Festival winners and the movies that do well are becoming more prominent at the Academy Awards. So let's talk about the show itself and what I thought of the production. After an opening montage of a video tribute to Los Angeles, which is actually very close to other LA tributes that I've seen on other award shows, Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo opened the Oscars, and I think that it was a good idea, though they were kept separate for most of the time, performing different songs and then ending with a shortened version of Defying Gravity. This was close to what I thought they should do to really kind of capitalize on the Wicked hype, but I don't think that it was the home run that it could have been. I did like the opening bit where Demi Moore turned into Conan, who then went digging around her body for his lost shoe, and I thought that Conan's opening monologue was pretty good. He had a really good joke directed at Netflix.
Netflix leads all studios with an impressive 18, count them 18, price increases.
He also had a great joke referencing the Emilia Perez controversy.
Anora uses the F word 479 times. That's 3 more than the record set by Carla Sofia Gascon's publicist.
And I really liked his bit about cutting to a disappointed John Lithgow if anybody's awards acceptance speech ran too long. I just wish that that policy had been enforced, Adrien Brody. That Lithgow face, though, is going to be a meme for sure. I also like the bit where he chides Adam Sandler for not wearing appropriate attire at the Academy Awards. Conan also had an opening number like he did when he hosted the Emmys, and while I don't think that the number itself was as good as the one he did back then, it did include a Dune sandworm playing chopsticks on the piano, which is exactly the kind of weird that I wanted from Conan. I also like this parody commercial of a big room where everybody can go and stream movies together.
We took 800 smartphones, glued them all together, and made one giant smartphone.
And honestly, I wish there had been more of that stuff, more pre-taped stuff, more bits. But Conan kind of fell into the mold of your typical Oscars host, which is somebody that comes out and has a monologue and then just kind of pops in from time to time to deliver a random joke. I did like both his spotlight on the Los Angeles first responders and using them to tell jokes that he said he didn't have the courage to tell. I thought that it was a great way to honor them, but also make that part of the show part of the fun.
Our hearts go out to all of those who have lost their homes. And I'm talking about the producers of Joker 2.
However, there were also some choices as far as what to put in the show that were interesting because you didn't have the original song nominees. I said before that I think if you're not going to do those performances, this is probably the year to do it. But I don't think that they really replaced it with anything compelling or, God forbid, just made the show shorter. First, we got Halle Berry, who set up a video tribute to James Bond, which set up a dance number featuring Margaret Qualley and the 007 dancers, which set up a Bond theme song medley performed by Doja Cat, Lisa, and Ray. And because I am very young and very in touch with pop culture, I absolutely did know who all of those people were, and I'm very familiar with their work. The first thing that was weird about it is that the Oscars did a tribute to Bond back in 2013 to celebrate 50 years of the franchise, so I don't know why they chose to do it again. I guess to commemorate the fact that Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson won the Governor's Award this year. Maybe Jeff Bezos slid him $5 million under the table to keep plugging the franchise. I don't know. It just seemed like odd timing. But also, why this? I mean, you took 8.5 minutes of a show to celebrate a franchise that's currently in creative turnaround with a dance number straight out of the Oscars in the 1970s and 3 songs that were not performed by their original artists. I mean, sure, 2 of the artists, Paul McCartney, Shirley Bassey, in their 80s, maybe they don't want to come back and do a performance on the Oscars, but you have Skyfall not sung by Adele, who is very much still a working, performing artist. It just seemed like an odd choice. If she didn't want to do it, there's plenty of other James Bond songs that you could pick, and all of it is more strange given the fact that you had winners, multiple winners, who didn't have a whole lot of time to speak, and you also had a whole song and dance literally from the host at the beginning of the show talking about not wasting time. The show also spent over 5 minutes on a tribute to Quincy Jones, who is absolutely a music legend, but also never won a competitive Oscar. I mean, I like Queen Latifah. It was a very enthusiastic rendition of Ease on Down the Road, but it just felt a little odd. The Grammys did a lengthy tribute to Quincy Jones, as well they should have, but it seemed odd for the Oscars to single Jones out, but also not to do extended in memoriam segments for others. I mean, there was a little bit for Gene Hackman. Morgan Freeman came out and said something, but there's next to nothing really for David Lynch other than him being in the in memoriam video itself. And it just seems weird to kind of hand select 1 or 2 people and not give what I think is equal time to others who left a cinematic legacy, I think, as large as Quincy Jones, just in a different field. At least the in memoriam section itself was better than it has been, with a constant focus on showing and showcasing the work of those who passed on, although poor Shelley Duvall literally had the curtain pulled over her during her video clip. Judging from internet reaction that I've seen, it seems the angriest omission award is for Michelle Trachtenberg or maybe Tony Todd. I don't envy the people that put that thing together because no matter how much time you spend on it, and because you have to include people from every branch, that you're going to leave out somebody, probably multiple people, probably actors, that folks are going to get angry about, and I guess you just have to live with it because it's going to happen. The Oscars also brought the 5 people talk about the nominees structure, although this time it was in a couple of the technical categories. It was for Best Costume Design and Best Cinematography. I'm not a big fan of this whole thing, but if you're going to do it, I think that this made a little bit of sense because at least you're using actors who'd worked with each one of the nominated artists and could provide insight to the work that they do. Robert Downey Jr. and Da'Vine Joy Randolph also offered kind words to each of the supporting nominees, which was okay, but it meant that we saw none of their actual work on the telecast. And that's just another part of the Oscars' inexplicable war on showing the actual clips of the movies nominated for their awards. Luckily, we did get clips for the lead actor and lead actress performances, and you cannot convince me otherwise that this was not the original plan until somebody realized it was going to be very odd for Emma Stone to say nice things about Carla Sofia Gascon. The other presenters during the show I think were pretty standard. I did love the banter between Scarlett Johansson and national treasure June Squibb.
And I'm actually being played by Bill Skarsgård right now.
And Ben Stiller proved once again that he is more than willing to go the extra mile to make a presenter bit that's actually funny.
Here are the nominees for production design.
I'd say that the presenter banner was above average, but really the thing that caught my attention the most all night was when they announced that there was going to be a Jaws exhibition at the Academy Museum. This is my actual reaction when I was watching the show and they announced it. It was maybe the most transfixed that I was all night. And I wanted to use a little clip of that reaction because I recorded myself watching the show. I'm not a big reactor, but I wanted to, in case something crazy happened, as tends to happen at the Academy Awards nowadays, I wanted a document of me watching the show. And the way that I did it is probably kind of backwards, was to do an unlisted stream back to my channel so that I would have like an archive. Well, what happened was that the stream picked up the ambient audio of my TV, which then registered on YouTube's copyright filters as third-party content, and I actually got a community guidelines warning for posting third-party content, which means that if something else happens within the next 90 days, I get a strike on my channel and I'm banned for a week. Now, I'm working on getting that fixed, but just in case I disappear for a week, you'll know that I have run afoul yet again of YouTube's faulty copyright system, or I've been kidnapped. So I talked about the highlights, I talked about the show. Let's talk about some of the speeches and winners that I haven't referenced yet. First of all, Kieran Culkin won Best Supporting Actor as expected and immediately swore on live television as expected. Honestly, though, I like the fact that he is very open about himself and his life and the fact that things like his upbringing weren't that great.
I should thank my mom and Steve for trying to raise me. You're really good people. You gave it your best shot. I love you, Mom.
And I also really like the story that he told about his wife unwittingly making a deal with him to have a fourth child.
She said, I will give you 4 when you win an Oscar.
Flo pulled off what I think could be called an upset, maybe the upset of the night, by winning Best Animated Film. This is the second consecutive year that a smaller international feature has upset a big Hollywood studio film that in any other year would have won the Academy Award. Last year it was The Boy and the Heron. This year it was Flo. This was also only the third time that an international film has won Best Animated Feature, and the first time that that movie wasn't a Studio Ghibli film. This was a big night for Latvia, so congratulations to Latvia on a big Academy Award win. The short categories continue to just baffle me. Not only did none of the ones that I picked to win actually win, none of the ones that I thought might win instead won either. The Only Girl in the Orchestra won for documentary short. I thought it was a good short, but it wasn't one of my favorites of the 5. I'm Not a Robot won for best live action short, which I thought had a good premise, but it didn't really pay off for me. And In the Shadow of the Cypress won for best animated short. And while I thought the animation was beautiful in that one, as far as overall impact, it wasn't really in my top 2 or 3. I am happy that the filmmakers in that category were able to make it from Iran to be there to accept their award. Apparently they landed just hours before the ceremony. I did think it was kind of weird that the guy just kind of snatched the phone away from his other filmmaker and then started their speech over because she wasn't saying it right. I don't know, it just kind of felt jerky to me.
Miracle, you have pen.
No.
Oh my God.
Let me read it myself.
Paul Tazewell became the first black man to win an Oscar for Best Costume Design for Wicked, so kudos to him. And Wicked also took the award for Best Production Design. In his speech for Best Original Screenplay, Sean Baker thanked the sex worker community, which, let's be honest, plenty of other Oscar winners have probably also wanted to thank the sex worker community, but for very different reasons. Peter Strawn, as expected, won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay for Conclave, and The Substance won for Best Makeup and Hairstyling. And can I just point out how happy I am that makeup as disgusting as what you saw in The Substance, and I mean that as a compliment, was actually able to take home the Oscar. I mean, I think The Substance might be the grossest movie to ever take that award. At the very least, I think The Fly is getting a run for its money. And while I have no doubt that the controversy around Emilia Perez cost it at least 1 or 2 awards last night, it did not cost Zoe Saldana her win. And listen, I'm happy for her. I think that she was good in the movie. I think she's had an underrated career. Honestly, her speeches have been a little bit too much for me this award season. But in light of Adrien Brody's speech, my criteria for what constitutes a little much when it comes to award speeches has definitely been permanently adjusted towards his end of the dial. Like I said, I'm happy for Saldana. She made history for an American of Dominican origin by winning an acting award. And so I'm just going to celebrate her win and not point out for the last time that the winners in both supporting categories were definitively either leads or co-leads in their respective films. Okay, I guess I just brought it up one last time. Emilia Perez also won Best Original Song for El Mal, a song that I don't particularly care for. And in light of all the controversy around Emilia Perez, I think that its win in the Best Original Song category proves conclusively that the Academy will never, ever give Diane Warren an Oscar. Their job on this earth is purely to tease and to torture her. Really, if Adrien Brody hadn't talked for so long, the speech for Best Original Song would have been on my radar when I talk about overlong acceptance speeches. They didn't just get to talk for too long. They also just kind of kept singing at the end. Maybe I'm just annoyed because I didn't realize until they went up to accept that El Mal winning means that Jacques Audiard gets to walk home with an Oscar as well. And I don't think that he should. Everybody that was in that little pot of craziness should have all walked away with nothing. And the fact that Jacques Audiard still gets an Oscar, I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. But if we're going to talk about categories where the controversy definitely lost Oscars for Emilia Perez, I think you have to look at Best International Film, although I think this was a controversy that ended in the right result because I'm Still Here ended up winning Best International Film. This is the first time that Brazil has ever won the Oscar for Best International / Foreign Language Film. I thought that I'm Still Here was a really good movie, and I didn't realize that I was actively rooting against Emilia Perez until the category came up, and I think it got the only fist pump of the night from me. The director of I'm Still Here, Walter Salles, gave a really good speech about dedicating the award to the actual subject of the film, Eunice Paiva, and also to the actresses who brought her to life, Fernanda Montenegro and Fernanda Torres. It was a great speech up until about 50 seconds in when, of course, the Academy Orchestra began playing him off.
Michael, you are the absolute best. Thank you so much.
Finally, if we're talking about winners, I think we have to talk about the Best Documentary category. In my Oscar pick show, I cast doubt on whether the Academy would be willing to give the award to No Other Land, despite the fact that I thought it was a fantastic documentary, because it was sure to stir controversy due to its subject matter, which is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I was a little surprised, but also happy that No Other Land actually won, and I feel like the team behind the film, which consisted of both Israeli and Palestinian filmmakers, gave a powerful and sobering speech that mainly appealed to finding a peaceful solution between both countries.
Can't you see that we are intertwined? That my people can be truly safe if Basel's people are truly free?
I haven't really seen what the reaction is. I'm sure it did stir controversy because there was also reference to the fact that current U.S. policy may be obstructing whatever that peaceful solution might be. But overall, my hope is that No Other Land's win here gets the movie out there even more so that more people can see it. Maybe people who now are able to see it could walk in with an open mind or ready to see this from a perspective where they might not have considered it before. And honestly, distributors have no excuse at this point when it comes to picking up this film for distribution. It was an Oscar hopeful, then it was an Oscar nominee, and now it is an Oscar winner. And I think that it is a very powerful film that presents a very humanistic point of view to what is a very complex problem, a problem that so many people have differing opinions on. But I think that this is an important voice that needs to be heard. And it's not just one voice. These are voices from both sides of this conflict. You know, I give Academy Award voters a lot of grief, and I think rightfully so, but I have to say, I have to tip my cap to them for the fact that they actually did give No Other Land the award for Best Documentary, knowing what they might be getting into, but also determining at the end of the day that this was indeed the most powerful nonfiction feature film that they'd seen this year. And personally, I agree. Overall, I thought that the Oscar show itself was fine. It excelled in some ways, but I think that it really was lacking in other ways. I don't think that it was the great show that they needed to put on to really put a fresh face on it and show people why they should be watching. I thought that the awards season itself was more interesting than the actual Oscars. I think Conan did about as well as I think you can do inside the confines of being an Oscar host. If he's asked back, and I'd like for him to be asked back, I'm hoping that maybe he can stretch the boundaries of what an Oscar host can do even more now that he kind of has a proof to the producers that he can carry the show. Do I think that the show won over any new fans or convinced anyone to come back to the telecast? Not necessarily, but I'm curious to see what the ratings are, especially if they're able to combine the live ratings with the streaming ratings to see if going on Hulu was able to bring in more viewers, although it would probably help if the Hulu stream had actually, worked consistently. I think what I'll really take away from this Oscar show is fonder memories of the movies themselves and some of the winners than the show itself. However, the Oscars this year didn't go off the rails and didn't end in complete disaster. And given their recent track record, by Oscar standards, that's not too shabby. But what did you think? What were your favorite parts of the ceremony? What were your least favorite parts? Who do you wish had won? Let me know down in the comments below, and stay tuned right here for more movie news, reviews, box office, and more. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.